Thank you very much. Next item on is visitors' comments. Visitors are welcome to speak on agenda and non-agenda items. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address prior to making your comments. Please note that members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, action taken is limited to directing the administration to look into the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for future consideration. I have 3 people who wish to talk. Oh yeah, you're going to do that? Okay, thank you. I was going to answer. All right. The first one is Julianne Cooper. And we wish to talk about community survey response.
Do you want my notes to go on? Please. My name is Julianne Cruiser. I'm a community member in Alpo, and this last week I could send out a survey to a lot of parents, athletes, and community members. We got 64 responses, and the questions that were asked were specifically related to starting sports back up, hopeful for spring sports. Of the 64, 60 said 100% they would want sports to start now. Only 3 said no way, and 1 was unsure still. I want you, just as we took a moment of silence for Cord, please take a moment of silence for these kids and these parents. Imagine that they were standing right in the middle. And I like to imagine that you all are doing the best you can. But I can't help but feel that you're letting the laws and order of operations get in the way of putting something in front, which is our kids. And right now, so many of them are ready to jump off the bridge because they're struggling with depression. And we know how hard it is to lose a community member. Well, these kids are our next generation. And I would pray, and I have been praying, that you all would please. I tried to get you to put this on the agenda for tomorrow to vote on. Some board members have said it's not necessary. Dr. Dooley said he will not vote on it himself to push this forward. But we need these sports to happen. And let me tell you why I feel it's safe. Because I don't want you to think my love of sports is ahead of keeping the kids safe. That's ridiculous. I think it's safe to go forward. The CAA and the AIA are following CDC guidelines. And they said from 0 to 75 cases, you're in the green. Well, guess how many cases Ajo has? 17, which is amazing. You guys have done a great job of reducing the risk of COVID. COVID's never going away, as sad as that is. But we need to now say, okay, let's move forward and safely do sport. It's time. And so again, I know I'm saying I pray a lot, but I do because I feel like these kids really need it. And I know you can't vote on it tomorrow, but Dr. Dooley, I spoke with you yesterday, and Randy Baum, I know you say Randy said the registration is passed, so when I talked to him, he said we still could register as a school. And I think where there's a will, there's a way. And if you're willing enough to put these kids ahead of order of operations, I believe we can still make it happen. He said we could. And just like you said, Dr. Lee, they're a money-making organization. They're going to want to make money. So why would they not be willing to also help our kids get into this spring sports right now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next is Karen Stockford. Karen. You want to talk about the reopening of school too?
A little bit, yeah. So my name is Kara Stalker. I live at 220 East 3rd, and I'm a teacher here at the Ajo Unified School District. A couple of things that I wanted to address were, one of them being, I was one of the staff members to receive the first dose of the Moderna vaccine on January 31st. With that in mind, not everyone and my colleagues did, some due to personal or medical reasons. And I'm not sure if that should be our end-all be-all for decision-making. For one main reason, and that's we don't know how the vaccine is going to work as far as being a carrier. While the person may not actually experience the symptoms, we don't know whether or not they could still be a carrier of the disease. I believe I speak for most when I say that we want kids back. We really do, but in a way that is safe and that allows us to remain in person once we come back. I'm also a member of a COVID committee that is comprised of parents, administrators, and a few other teachers as well. Last week, we had a meeting on Wednesday afternoon, and one parent actually asked, why are we even discussing this right now? Why don't we focus on what's going to be coming in the fall? Why don't we focus on next school year instead of what's happening now? The last thing that I want to mention is the idea of bringing back all students at once. The idea has kind of been floating around the community, and I think that that would not be possible, first of all, to also follow CDC guidelines of maintaining 6 feet between desks. I have my room set up, and the maximum that I can fit is 15 students right now. That's all. With a class of, I believe, 20 right now, it wouldn't be possible. So I don't think that it would be a responsible decision during this point or at any point in this academic year. And as a science teacher, because that's what I teach here, I tend to think scientifically about a lot of things, and including everyday decisions. So every decision I make comes down to facts and numbers. So all that I ask is that you take all data and numbers into consideration instead of personal opinion when this vote is being made. Thank you.
All right, and the other is Jennifer Keller.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Keller. I live at 744 West Wild Sagebrush Lane, and I am a middle school teacher here at Auburn. I am speaking to everyone tonight about whether or not we should go back to school at any time this school year. I will not actually insert my own opinion, but rather provide a couple of facts before a decision is made. I have heard my students and parents discuss that socialization is important and for themselves or their children, that this is like the most important thing to them at this time. If or when we do return to campus, students will continue to work on their Edgenuity courses and follow CDC social distancing guidelines. This basically means that the students will not have group work or time to socialize outside of the 6 feet guidelines. The students may or may not be with their friends within the classroom while working on their laptops. So it might not exactly remedy that need for socialization that you might be hoping. The school currently has 0 substitutes for the entire school. This basically means that if one teacher is ill or needs to take a day for any reason, the teacher could not do so because the school does not have any coverage. Teachers would basically have to ensure that they can never be sick, or if they have any doctor's appointments, they just have to put it off until the end of the school year. So I also encourage everyone to just base some of their decisions on evidence and facts that are presented before you. While everyone is getting kind of annoyed with the way things are, we want to avoid any more breakouts.
Did you want to say something? All right, then let's just move on. Next order of business is discussion and a report from the Human County Health Department.
I feel like we are a long ways apart
Yeah.
because using this facility, we have only one screen, and I talked to Mr. Brian Eller, and Mr. Eller is with Pima County Health Department. He's a school COVID liaison. Occasionally when We have Pima County superintendent meetings online. Mr. Eller is always present, and he's very knowledgeable. I spoke with him via email a few days ago, and he indicated he'd be willing. He has 2 schools tonight to talk to, as I recall. And so I thought perhaps he could talk to you about what the county's position is, or what's happening in the county with the COVID outbreak. Because I know that's something that people, it's in everybody's mind, so I write about it in board letters, unfortunately. Brian, thank you for being here. I'm hidden behind the camera, you can't see me, which is fine. But I have, this is not our normal boardroom, but we wanted to be able to have you talk to our board.
There we go. I think I can hear you now, sir. Sorry, the internet was scrambled.
Oh, great. We have 4 or 5 board members here, so thank you for your time. I have a couple of questions. I don't know whether you want me to start with those questions, or would you like to have me ask those?
Sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Sorry.
Let me move over here. Excuse me, Brian. I'm gonna sneak in here and speak. Brian, I have a couple of questions. We have a speaker here at the board president's table. I don't know whether you want me to ask questions now or after you do your presentation, because you may have already answered them. What would you prefer? Brian, can you hear me now?
Try the other one.
Oh, this one. Sorry about this, folks. Can you hear me now, Brian?
No, he's having trouble.
So it's his system, not ours.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a life without Zoom, folks.
We can call this, these things.
How does it go?
Hi, that's a lot better.
I can't do it.
Can you hear me okay?
We're trying.
Okay, sorry about the technical issues there. I'm familiar with those running buttons.
Can you hear me through this speaker, Brian?
Yes, I can do this one.
Okay. I'm sure some of the board has questions. I'm standing near the phone so you can hear me. Has questions, and I have a couple of questions. Would you like us to ask those after your presentation?
Yeah. So I have a presentation today. I'm just going to do a screen share. That's just a direct pull for the questions that you sent me.
Okay.
And then I'll expand a little bit further upon each one of those answers if that works for you.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm honored to be able to jump in and help you all out. I definitely like off a lot.
So do we.
I can't get screen sharing for some reason here, so I don't know if I interrupt your able to. But if not, I can just post these in the chat too. So.
You can now.
Should be able to now.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in on each one of these piece by piece here. Okay. And let me go back to the original email that you sent over, sir, so I can make sure to get those taken care of and addressed. So the first question that was posed is in regards to vaccinations and health department stances. So the one thing that I can tell you to just kind of start off is we are anxiously awaiting the CDC's guidance on post-second vaccination and what that means, specifically as it pertains to quarantine and isolation protocols. The CDC has yet to come out with that guidance for the local health departments. So we don't know what it's going to be after the second vaccination or how long quarantine will be. I think we can make a general assumption at this point in time that there are going to be a lot of exemptions from quarantine. The thing that we're looking at in terms of the post-vaccine data is what that exemption is going to be. Is it going to be a 90-day period? Is it going to be a 300-day period? How long will it be before they need the booster, separately for Pfizer or for Moderna, depending on how that vaccine goes. For now, we're going, just to be on the safe side of things, what we're gonna recommend, and you'll see this guidance come out from the state, is after a second vaccination for any of your staff, that as long as they're not symptomatic, they can come back from quarantine if it's just an exposure, as long as they're wearing a mask with fidelity at school campus. That's not official guidance at this point, that's just kind of, until that CDC guidance comes out, we have that green light. We're expecting that last Friday. We should get that by this Friday at the latest, at least that's what I've been told by the state. So as soon as we have that, we'll be announcing that on the Tuesday and Thursday sessions, for which I know Dr. Julie has been attending frequently on behalf of all the school districts. So we will make sure to get that update out to you all as soon as we can. After the second vaccine, there's my understanding is that it takes about 14 days to achieve full immunity post second vaccination. So that number is could potentially change. I do have the second document here. So I'm gonna pull up here for a second. So the CDC currently, and again, we're waiting for updated guidance on this, they currently advise vaccinated persons to continue following quarantine guidance after having close contact with someone affected with COVID-19. We do think for essential employees, in which teachers do fall into that category, if they receive the second dose of vaccine, that is going to potentially change within the next week or so, okay? And that was the guidance that was published on December 10th. After the second vaccine, it's taking 10 days to 2 weeks, so that's where that 14-day number came from that I cited earlier in terms of the efficacy. All of these questions actually are addressed on our FAQ site, which I'm going to show you how to find that here in a minute. In terms of social distancing, we do still recommend social distancing. We may see some changes for early childhood education when the CDC guidance is released. We just got a report from the Brown College Public Health, which showed that there is a difference between early learners, which we would classify between the ages of 5 and 11. Those children tend to present asymptomatic, which we think they're less likely to transmit because they're not coughing, sneezing, and projecting airborne particles of COVID-19 through that method of transmission. But the early learners, because they're asymptomatic, are less likely to transmit. So therefore, there could be a recommendation that social distancing for early learners goes down to 3 feet instead of 6. We are going to wait for the final CDC guidance on that, and I have been looking and really searching for the research to support that claim. The county health department will not make that recommendation until we can find the research that substantiates that specific claim. For older learners, and right now the county is recommending across the board 6 feet of social distancing for all students, K through 12 at this point in time, as well as other public spaces, in combination with masking fidelity. The health department did recently review new updated recommended guidance for return to school. I think you all will be happy to hear that we are no longer going to be issuing any guidance recommending remote, hybrid, or traditional face-to-face instruction. We will leave that to you all as school boards to decide what's best for your communities. The thing that we absolutely will recommend, though, is strong mitigation. And that strong mitigation comes down to 3 main things: washing your hands, washing frequently touched surfaces, wearing a mask at all times except for in the lunchroom or outside at play, and then social distancing. And that's going to be in all times situation as well. Of course, excepting the playground where you're going to have frequent occurrences closer than 6 feet. But because you're outdoors and in an outdoor setting, as long as the students are not symptomatic, the risk of transmission is significantly reduced. Okay. The last criteria that's going to be really important for LAHO to look at is the reporting of the thesis. So anytime you have a staff or a student at your school site that tests positive for COVID-19, The health department really needs to know about that for a couple of reasons. One, because one of the metrics that we're tracking is outbreaks. I can talk more about what outbreak is specifically. So in short, I know that was a really long-winded answer, and I appreciate your patience. In short, we are still recommending social distancing until the CDC tells us that that is no longer needed, and that the science is showing that that's not a mitigation effort that's successful. The last question here is the CDC coming out with their classroom and physical requirements, but if all buildings do not have that capacity, then ultimately, however Outbreak Qualifier decides to proceed with the method of instruction, again, the only thing that the health department strongly suggests is pretend can't do anything. But if you want to prevent outbreaks at your school sites and prevent transmission at home with students who would transmit the disease from the classroom settings, and those three pieces that I referenced earlier in terms of mitigation are absolutely critical. So far from August until current day, in all of Pima County, we had 57 total outbreaks, and that's for the 400 plus schools that all lie within Pima County. That tells us that we're doing a really good job in mitigation and containing the spread. An outbreak again is when you have two or more epidemiologically linked cases. That means that those two students are not siblings. They're not playing over the weekend at a park. They're not hanging out at a sleepover. And it's a direct transmission that can be traced back to the school site. So that's how we classify them. We've only had 57 so far, and just this last week, we've had several cases resulting from basketball games and JV and varsity basketball games. So just to give you an understanding, again, of like this idea of like the social distancing and masking, when you do those things in school, it works, it prevents transmission. Overall, as a health department, those are the main guidance and guidelines that we'll be supplying to schools from here on out. So I think those are the four questions that you sent to me, Dr. Dooley. I'm more than willing to take some additional questions. I have availability until about 6:15 when I have to jump on another board meeting this evening. And if there's anything that I'm not able to answer tonight, any one of you can contact me directly on my cell phone, which I'll make sure to post in the chat, and I can make sure that I address those questions for you.
Thank you, Brian. I had a question. You touched on this, but I wanted to be a little more succinct if possible. We have had our staff, 80% of our staff has had their first vaccination. We're due for a second vaccination March 1st through the Sunita Health Clinic here in Ajo. Please clarify. After the second vaccination, if I'm exposed, do I still quarantine? I think the answer is yes.
So that we're still a little unclear on.
Okay.
And look for more specific guidance in the next 2 weeks or so.
And that's from CDC? That guidance will come from CDC or from Pima County Health?
It'll come from both of those organizations.
Thank you.
And if the CDC is unable to give us that guidance within the next 2 weeks, we will work internally with our connections and contacts at the CDC and Partners in Health to make sure that we're going to issue a recommendation that's based on research and on data. But what the current recommendation is at this exact point in time is after your staff received that second vaccination, if they were in close contact, as long as they were wearing a mask, then they won't have to do the quarantine. If they were not wearing a mask, then we will ask them to continue the quarantine for a period of 10 days. They can get out of that early and they take a test on day 6, which is a PCR test. I can share a graphic. I'll just email that to you, Dr. Dooley, that shows on a chart or timeline what that short quarantine actually looks like. And I can even pull that up right now while we're on this call.
Thank you. My last question, you may not be, this may be not a part of your department. I want to ask a question about children of essential workers and children with special education IEPs. Currently, we have to provide services, which we're all in favor of doing that. If we went with a hybrid program, where we had half the students every other day type program, would we have to continue having those students in school every day per the governor's executive order? Or would it be, there needs to be met legally if we did a hybrid program for the children of essential workers as well as special education students?
Yes, sir. That's an excellent question. And I'm just going to tell you my understanding. So this is not, this is something you may need to consult with the governor's office on, or with your legal department or your legal team, if you have a legal advisory council that your district works with. My current understanding is that the governor's order, which mandates that education for those high-risk students, whether they're children of essential workers or whether they're exceptional education students, is that the district must provide those services regardless of which. I think that if there's some assistance in figuring out how to do that, I can definitely look for connections within exceptional education advisory boards and committees, and then connect Tahoe to those services in order to facilitate methods that are actually going to work for your district.
Thank you very much, board members.
You want the whole board?
Sure. Hey, Brian, it's Wendy Robertson. How are you doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's good to hear your voice. I see you sort of on the screen. So a couple of questions. You said that FEMA Health Department is no longer recommending the remote hybrid or in-person learning. Does that mean that the benchmarks, the state benchmarks are going away?
My understanding, based on a conversation with the state on Friday, is that that is the case, that they are also waiting for that CDC guidance. I think the benchmarks are still going to stick around, primarily because that's what's being used in order for businesses to navigate opening rules and measurements and those kinds of requirements. Overall, the important thing for all of us to know, especially for affiliated with education, is that compared to other sources of community spread, schools are a really safe place for folks to be at right now. I was on a call with our lead epidemiologist earlier today, and she reinforced the idea that overall, the number of student to teacher transmission rates that we've seen across the county have been exceptionally low. I know right now of 4 specific cases where that's happened. And yeah, that's 4 too many, but again, those were situations where mitigation was just not present. So those are just some things to consider and understanding why this recommendation is being made for us.
Okay, thank you. Another question, I don't know if you can speak on this, but I'm hoping you can give us some insight. So when we're trying to balance opening the amount of COVID in our community with other factors like mental health issues that might be happening among our students, do you have any insight, anywhere we can look for more guidance on that?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons why we are going this direction as a health department is specifically because of the mental health issues that we're seeing manifesting with our children in the community. We definitely have, we've pointed out the importance of social and emotional wellness and the role that schools play in filling that need for a lot of our kids and families. So I think as a health department, we can give you the numbers on what we're seeing in terms of suicidality or depression or calls for help on an aggregate level for age-specific populations within a zip code context. We can give you the case rates for age-related hospitalizations, positive tests, and things within a zip code as well, as long as it doesn't break Keller, which means that it's over 20 cases in a month period. Beyond that, I think what you're seeing with this current statement is that the health department is really turning back to the communities and saying, ultimately, you all live in our own individual basis. I come out there, if I'm lucky, maybe once every 4 to 5 months, right? So you're gonna know what's best for your community much more than I will, as really as an outsider. And what we can do is we can supply you with data we have, and we can help you make informed decisions. But really, we want to see you make those decisions for your community, because your community are going to listen to their school boards, to the folks that run the local governments much more than they will from a county entity. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, thank you. I have one last question. We have the mandatory reporting of cases, and you said that an outbreak is 2 or more linked cases. So what is the health department's role there? Will you tell us, oh, you have to close because you had this many cases? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have 2 thresholds that we've established for an educational intervention, that's what we call it. Ultimately, your district will be responsible for making the decision on whether or not to close, exempting some like really serious breaches of mitigation. The 2 scenarios that we currently are looking at, which will promptly call from the health department, will be a 10% caseload over a 4-week period. So, for example, if you had 1,000 students at your school or at your district, if we saw 100 cases within a 4-week period, that would be a big red flag for us. So reach out to your community, work with the superintendent, principal, and other advisors within that community to figure out what's going on and how can we get back on the right track. So that's one indicator, is a 10% caseload over 4 weeks. The other big indicator that we're looking at is the outbreak qualifier. And if we see 3 or more, well, 3 outbreaks within a 4-week period, that's another really big red flag. And that really tells us that there are some mitigation efforts that we need to do a better job as a health department in reaching out to your community and doing a better job of educating on how to meet those requirements better.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else?
I have one question. Hi, Brian. This is Leonard Edlin. I'm the principal here. Hi there. I have one question regarding ventilation and how critical that is if you do not have fresh air exchange necessarily, but your ventilation is recycling. Is that a significant detriment, or is there a way around that you guys have explored or came up with possibly?
Yeah, so we actually did a full webinar on this that I think we have recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, which I can send a link out to Dr. Dooley later on.
That would be great.
I'm pretty sure that the new CDC guidance is actually going to touch on ventilation and specific strategies around that. Because I don't know the specifics of that guidance at this point in time, I'm a little apprehensive to give a specific citation on that. What I can say is that previously there were specific ventilation HEPA requirements that I can't give you off the top of my head. I can try to go back and look through my notes and get those to you. But there were suggested HVAC recommendations in terms of filtration and making sure that your AC and your heating units, whatever you're using at your school site, are able to meet those enhanced ventilation requirements. I know that a lot of schools, because of older infrastructural constraints, have been just opening windows and doors to classrooms periodically throughout the day and using fans to get natural air circulation through those rooms. There's also a lot of classrooms that have successfully been able to move to an outdoor educational space periodically throughout the day. We've seen some really good things around that too, in terms of a reduction in overall cases. So that's the best answer I can give you right now. I am hopeful though that when CDC releases this guidance, you'll have more specifics on that strategy.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Elder, we appreciate your time. Unfortunately for you, I have your email. If I have questions, I'll be sending them out daily, I'm sure. Thank you again very much for your time, appreciate it. Good, yeah.
Yeah, glad to be on there.
Okay,
The
great.
Oasis still around out there, Chicago?
Who?
The Oasis back.
Yes, in the plaza. In fact, the former owner is sitting here, he's become a reporter, so you gotta be careful what you say around him.
Oh, yeah, and I still have my truck, so.
There you go, I go every day.
There you go. Yeah, it's very fun to sit there at this time of year in the plaza, so, great, all right. Thank you, Brian, have a good time when you're at your meeting.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
I think that was very informative.
I apologize for invading your space, people.
Could you hear it all over here?
Sure, yeah, you're great, thank you. Great, thank you.
All right, but next is discussion on curriculum and instruction items. And since that deals primarily, the board is being asked to study review existing COVID-19 outbreak situation in Arizona and direct administration on model for continuing instruction in the school. And you listed 3 options. Continue with online only instruction program, and I presume you need till the end of the year?
I think this is something that Mr. Ed and I were speaking about today. I know there's an interest in the community among the board to reopen in some capacity because of what Julianne said about the social emotional issue for children. I'm constantly worried about COVID kids. So one of the things that we are worried about is if we have an outbreak. For example, the last 2 Mondays, last Monday we had 11 staff members out. Part of it was regarding the vaccination we had on Saturday in the gymnasium. There was reaction from some people more severe. One person I know just started their reaction yesterday. So it's interesting that there's not a one answer to these questions, unfortunately. Today we had, yesterday we had 14 people out. 17? 17. We had 9 people that were exposed in one event. So they're quarantining. If we have an event similar to that with students here, whether on a hybrid situation, we can't run the school. We don't have anyone to take care of them. So what we need to be able to do, Mr. Edmund and or I, is say, we're shutting down for the next week, we're shutting down for the next 8 days. I don't want to call you folks together every time we have that type of attendance challenge, but we want to have the kids safe. And in a normal setting, that's a principle. When we had shortage of substitutes 100 years ago, we would break classes up and put 5 kids in every classroom to get rid of 30 kids perhaps. With the social distancing, we can't do that. So we want to be able to send kids home, let the parents know, of course, and then maybe have to shut school down for a few days. I spoke with staff from Eagle Bend today. They've opened and closed 3 times thus far this year, and so it's something. And I hear the same thing with my colleagues in Tucson, much bigger districts, but they're going through some of the same things. So again, when we talk about continuing online program, only instruction program, again, I'm thinking about the rest of the year, or the other model, I think it's talk about safety of kids here. Is having a hybrid model. But when I started, I said no later than February 22nd when I did this agenda item. We may want to push that back because unfortunately, March 1st, we're going to have people exposed. So we may say, but one of the things Mr. Edmund talked about today was we may tell parents ahead of time, we're going to be here on Monday, March 1st, but we're going to have online the rest of the week because the chances are high, from what I read, what I hear, that the second vaccination, people receiving that vaccination have a more serious result. People have, I guess, a mini COVID situation, so we can't keep students safe. There's just mere supervision if we don't have staff. Our substitutes, and we'll talk about this again more tomorrow, I think, are basically saying we don't want to come if we don't feel safe. So that's the word. That's what we're doing. Sure.
I put a survey out to all staff recently. I gave them just 5 options. I said, please rate your preference from 1 to 5, 1 being your most preferred, 5 being your least preferred. And the choices were an AB schedule starting in mid-February, hybrid, all kids returning mid-February, a March AB schedule 2 weeks after the second vaccine, same date in March, all kids returning, or remote for the remainder of the year. The results that came in it was clear. The overwhelming first choice was mid-March AB schedule. The next clear second choice was remote for the remainder of the year, and then the rest of them were further down the line as far as results. But it was overwhelming. It was very, very, very clear the selection was an AB schedule by staff, starting in at least 2 weeks after their second.
What number of these responses did you get?
I got 27 of 30 teachers responded. So that was a very good response rate. Typically, I get 29 or 30 responses when I put a survey out, but we had a couple of people out that just didn't respond, and they had, I think, 3 days so far. Yeah. So the survey is still open; they can still respond at any time, but that's as of this afternoon. So, and then we will touch more on subs tomorrow, but at this point in time, something to consider is we do not have any subs that are willing or able at this point.
How do other schools handle that? Because I'm sure that we take the Catholic schools, they've been open since Christmas. I had the school that I was teaching in Gunnison, Colorado, they have been open for quite a while. And they don't seem to have any problem. The college in town had a lot of cases of COVID, but they didn't have any cases in the school.
Yeah, like I said, our biggest issue is the fact that we just don't have subs that are willing to do it. I mean, on a normal, but we've reached out to every single sub that we have on our list. And we did have one that was interested, but had another issue come up that they're not able to speak. And I did reach out to try and get Gila Bend to see if they would be interested in sharing some subs, but they're struggling with substitutes as well. So, but I felt like that was my only other close resource that I could really contact and have at least some shot of recruiting outside of Gila.
I guess my fear is that substitutes or teachers not coming in are not as important as the education that the kids are missing. And I don't feel that the in-home learning in a lot of cases is doing it. And that it's like a whole year lost. And if we go all the way till the end, It's so sad.
It is.
And
You're
I think we
absolutely
should
right. They
put our
can't
creative
pull- you can't
minds
create
together.
A substitute that doesn't exist. That's my biggest concern.
Put something creative together that we can work something, that they can come back to school. The head of the CDC, it's been, school opening has been a topic on all the talk shows. And the head of the CDC said, get those kids back, it's the safest place they can be.
But last week, Pima County, I think it was last week, the second highest group of people in Pima County that had the virus was under 19, under the age of 19. The week before last, we had 3 deaths in Arizona of persons under 19. So it's.
How low did they go?
That's 0 to
0 to 19.
Yeah, but they didn't say that it was like 12 to 19, which is.
No, they don't break it down any lower.
One of the things I hear is typically the primary grades are safer than the
Yes.
upper grades.
Yes.
Because of just the way kids are, the way, and the size of and the health and so on and so forth.
And we'll have some more information to share with you on that tomorrow morning. With some data. We're hoping the CDC new guidelines come out tomorrow. President Biden said on Sunday morning in an interview that the CDC was supposed to update the release new guidelines for schools on Wednesday, is what he said. So I'll be checking all day to see if that comes out. So
Real quick, I understand the teachers prefer, was it a mid-March A&B schedule?
Mhm.
Me personally, I believe we'd be back in the seats with the online option remaining for parents that don't want to send their kids. I think we need to do that. I would even consider, we have Wednesdays are half days. Why don't we have a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule? Because I don't have numbers, but I would like to know them, and I think we'll let you get those. But I don't think we're gonna see the majority of the student population returning. I think we're still gonna have a large chunk maintaining online presence. So I think if we did that, my personal thoughts are, I would like to see like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday school week. And with the online option remaining. But I don't think we're gonna have every student back in the seat anyway. And I think, to me, I think it'll be a little important because this is all gonna come back up again for the fall semester. And I would rather the district have a little bit of knowledge, like, okay, we did this didn't work. This might work, let's, kind of like testing it out because it's gonna come up again for the fall. Numbers are gonna change, infection rates are gonna change. I think as long as the district is providing the PPE that teachers need and they get their vaccinations if they so choose to, because I understand some people may not want to do it, I'm fine with that. I'm one that did not get vaccinated, I'm an essential employee. But I think we need to have the kids back in the some type of classroom setting so they can basically get back in the groove of learning. My personal opinion, I think that's going to be the best bet for them. And I hate, I'm not trying to turn the school into a bunch of guinea pigs, but we got to do something because these kids are being affected so badly by this online at home away from them. I mean, I take advantage of essential worker stuff. My kids all come to school and they are doing much better. They're on top of their assignments, they're catching up where they were falling behind. Because they have at least a certified teacher that can say, hey, I have a question for this one. This isn't working, and it's not over Zoom. As you can see how wonderful Zoom works. They need that one-on-one with a certified teacher. And I think we need to give them that opportunity if the parents so choose to send them to school.
Is the public allowed to comment?
No.
When can we? Because I thought this was a discussion.
Call the public at the beginning of the agenda.
Tomorrow we'll have another call to the public. Is it a discussion?
We can give a comment.
The comment, yeah.
in addition to your concerns about staff, just a little bit about your concerns about the bus routes. Okay, we have went to the county buses to try and figure out how many people we could get on there coming close to the social distancing guidelines from Lukeville. The largest county bus with close to social distancing, which would be about 5 feet instead of 6 feet, we could get 13 kids on the largest county bus. We have 87 students registered in Lukeville, and between outside of Aho to Lukeville, total, we have exactly 100 kids. So 13 from just outside of Aho and Y down, and then Lukeville is 87, so that totals to 100. And that's what our numbers are as of this afternoon. But we measured that out yesterday morning, I think it was. We had, our maintenance person went over and calculated that out for us. And 13, so 2 buses, we could bring in roughly 25 kids, because one bus is a little smaller than the other at a time from Lukeville. We did call the county superintendents and ask them, hey, would it be possible to have 2 more buses and drivers to be able to accommodate that? And we didn't get an answer, we got straight laughter. We said, well, I guess that means no, and they said, right. So, I mean, that was a little disheartening, because we were trying to be proactive and find out what our options were, because we all know how long it takes to get to Lukeville and to come back. So there's really no way that our buses can make 2 runs for even half the kids to come in and down there. So that's something, it's definitely something we have to look at. We have 2 buses we could run around town here in Aho for our local, and we do have someone that we could use as a second driver in Aho that has driven for us in the past. And then Mr. Warren, our maintenance supervisor, would also drive. So that would give us 2 drivers in town, and that would help us in town. That would help us in town. The other issue is health checks for picking kids up on buses. A concern that we've talked about is there are no parents there. So if a kid doesn't need the health check to get on the bus, what do? We can't leave them. But we can't put them on a bus if they're showing displaying symptoms or signs. So those are some of the, these are all some of the things that we'll share a little bit more tomorrow night. We've got a little PowerPoint that we've got to share.
Mr. Edler, can you take the buses away from the town and put them on the run and have the parents drop the children off? They did a very good job of bringing them for breakfast in the summertime, or transporting them for some of the activities around it, and they could carpool and get the kids here and not have the buses run within
I talked to the county superintendent today about that very topic, because I had heard the rumor. And our business is replete with rumors and stories right now. And one of them was that in Maricopa County, most school districts aren't running buses. Not necessarily the case. In talking to the county superintendent, every district that he knows of in Pima County runs a bus. And when I suggested, I asked about that because I thought that'd be the solution for why I wasn't paying the Lukeville students. I kind of received the same laugh that I got. I said you had 2 or 3 more buses and 2 or 3 more drivers. Wasn't necessarily, he said he'd look into it, but he wasn't optimistic. What he said that I have a hard time understanding is, we've heard from Mr. Eller, and we constantly hear from Dr. Fauci, social distancing, social distancing, social distancing. he said what's happening in Tucson area, basically kids are sitting in every other seat. But still, with a bus like Mr. Edlin is describing, we might be able to bring back twice as many kids. We might be able to bring back 30. Now in town, we have Mr. Young, and we have a part-time driver that last year drove the sporting events. Mr. Young believes that he'd be willing, if we had our runners from the old Dairy Queen to the end of paper, pardon me, that we would be able to have one bus run one side of the highway and one the other side of the highway. So I think for we couldn't do that, just make 2 runs. But when we have 40 miles run to the border, that's going to be a really challenge. And one of my worries, I want to be equitable to all our kids. I don't want to make group of kids and think, well, we're not important, we're not getting a bus. So that's
And you were just mentioning every other seat, that 13 kids was usually using every other seat. So that's how we ended up with almost 5 feet instead of.
They're not social distancing in Tucson schools, according to testing. Which is shocking.
Well, the 100 kids, if you do it every one, 13 on bus, that's 8 bus rides.
And they won't do that.
What's our enrollment in the school?
Last year, we were about 430, now we're about 340. The state has lost.
So a third of the kids are coming from Luke.
Yeah. If we have, we don't know for sure how many it was, if we start up again, we had 25% last year.
It's about 30% this year. We fill water.
And they live at the trailer park there?
They all have guardians in Pima County. That's all.
That can't be true.
Well, they have to have a guardian to enroll in school. That's have an offer.
But they don't live with the guardian.
There's no law, pardon me, there's no law that requires how many days a week you have to stay with the guardian. That's the challenge. So, that's no discretion.
Yeah.
Is there any way with these guardian parents and these students, we can maybe get a quick informal survey with them? Are they willing to send their children to school, or they prefer to keep them home? And then we get a little more of a solid number we can work with, and we'll start thinking outside the box. I mean, I like to see my kids here, but you know what, if it's gonna come down to we have to follow these certain guidelines.
Yeah, we did that back in the summer, we did that, but, so would you like us to try and do one with just the Pima County bus kids, or?
Let's try to keep it with the Lukeville area,
Yeah.
because that's a third of the student population right there. And see if we get a number on it. I know it's time consuming, and I appreciate you guys doing that. And if we have to, if there's so many kids, we may have to consider doing a lottery system for the bus. Start thinking of some other options.
We have one of our secretaries in the school office, COVID-related situation, not her, COVID-related. So are you asking, let me clarify, so you're asking how many parents want their children to come back or stay online?
Correct. That way we would kind of get a number of how many we should expect. And then touching on the aspect of if the child has a fever, too sick, there's no one there, we may have to stipulate a parent has to be there when they get on the bus. There's no way around that. We're all, accommodating things and having to adjust to it. No, we as parents have to do it also.
Our original plan this summer, when things were not as serious as they have been in July and November and January, was every driver would have, the easiest thing to do is take temperature and do that before the child gets on. And we talked to teachers about that. Shannon Wolf, our nurse, is doing that every day right now. The students are here. It takes away from instructional time. It's just one of those things for safety we feel we have to do.
But yeah, I mean, we can try that. I'm not sure that we can get through it like for tomorrow.
No, I don't expect it that fast, but I think within our time frame of between now and March, if we get something done, just get some numbers, we can kind of know what we're working with. If you do so decide to approve opening in one way or another tomorrow, that's, something we can look at in this logistical challenge.
I think the parent or guardian with the bus is going to be a bigger issue than some of us may realize. It'll be a huge issue.
Even when I was a kid, I wouldn't have loved them on the bus stop. Because I didn't want to be embarrassed. I had a big brother that would report to her real quick. But even here in town, it's a challenge.
Because we'll still have the same issue with kids getting on the bus stops.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have there's 125.
Historically, there's not been parents at those bus stops either, according to.
Would it be possible if we went with that plan and say, the parent needs to be there, or the student needs to remain online student? Since we're gonna have that option available.
Yeah.
If you get support on that.
I get it, however, as an educator, I have a certificate. If we take off and we leave a kid at the bus stop, they'll be a parent.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that.
We're not saying do that at all.
Unless
We're trying to prevent a child being there by themselves, and the bus driver take their temp, say, your temp's 100.5, you can't come on the bus.
I completely get it,
You know?
Yeah,
however, the first time a kid shows up at a bus stop and has a temperature and there's no parent there, because that will happen. I promise you that will happen.
And that's something we would think about.
Yeah.
Because that's why we're bringing this up, yeah.
What you're suggesting is, I hadn't thought about it, it's a good idea. It's a good idea if we could get parents to behave as well as kids behave. And no offense, parents, I'm sorry. But it'd be nice to say, okay, Mr. Curtis, your kids have got to be online unless you promise you or your wife to be at the bus stop with them every day. And I think probably the first week that would be pretty fortunate. There might be some slacking off after.
Then the other thing is, auto transportation bringing kids to school stuff.
They did last year.
Let's look at that, because if they bring the kids over and all of a sudden they got a temperature, then you gotta call the parents to take, gotta ice their kid, everybody else.
Could there be, sort of like the crossing guards would be at the bus stop? So that, because it seems to me Louisville is small enough that they would know everyone in that area. And they could be the designated parent and take them home.
Louisville's gonna be a big challenge. Just because of the nature of pickup. I've never been there during pickup right here.
Maybe we should limit who we can pay.
I agree, that's right. I'm just trying to think outside the box here. You know, like, even like I brought up a little bit ago, lottery system. For those parents that are gonna have their kids on the bus, okay, we're gonna take this many for this month, we're on the bus, and we'll renew it for next month, something. I'd hate for him to lose the opportunity, but this is just, logistically, it may not be able to happen with.
How many, excuse me, Eric, but how many are, getting on the bus that are under guardianship?
Probably 90%.
Then you have a big problem.
I don't, I'm not counting. Maria, that's school up, right?
Maybe we just have to say they can't come.
We need to still have to give them the opportunity.
And the same thing is happening It's not just Arizona and Mexico, same things happen with Arizona and California, Arizona and New Mexico. It's not about citizenship, it's about residency. And it's residency in Arizona, period, not residency in the United States, it's residency in Arizona, it's just taxpayer-based, basically. Courtside life got in trouble. Years ago, they did some really unwise things.
Well, we've had trouble here. And I hate to
We've
see
won.
that happen again.
Courtside life, the Courtside for sending their buses in with light. None of it. Pick up kids for, pick up students for a private school. Spouse working in their school.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next thing. Is a discussion of personal items. 8A. And read it, and it is pretty basic. It's just a resignation, and then approval of teacher contracts. And that's not all the teachers that are on there. It's just the ones who have given notice that they will be returning. Is that correct?
And one of the things, we had 2 board meetings back. We had reduced the budget by $508,000. And so the commissioners board that evening, we'll make it through the year because we had such a large carryover from last year. Ms. Burns and I are extremely nervous about what comes up for next year. And we have not had to have a reduction in force for some time here. But that may be happening. Or we may have to, for a year, eliminate programs that we think are important for kids. And because there's no money. I received an email from someone today that thought that our COVID grant money from the federal government would bail us out. Well, the first one we had, for example, we don't know any details yet about how much is going to be allocated to Arizona, how much the government is going to put out to schools. We're not the only recipients of that money. We received $112,000 from the first COVID act that Congress passed. We've probably spent $190,000. And none of that money was not budgeted. Just when we did the budget for 2020 fiscal year, we had not anticipated a pandemic. So, in fact, Ms. Burns and I are meeting a week from tomorrow to spend some time working on proposing budget. The budget's a long ways away, not as long as I want it to be. We got to have a budget hearing in June and a budget adoption in July. But we've got to talk about things we need to save money. And it's going to hit us. And so we've been told that some of our staff won't come back, so we're going to look at ways to maybe fill out spots if we have vacancy. But it will tell us income education program. That's going to be a challenge for us.
Have any of the staff made any indication that they're waiting to return their answer to you about working again based on our decision tomorrow?
I've heard informally from a few, not a lot. Most of them have done this resident survey or passed out the letter of intent. It's not binding. I was talking to a person today. I was looking for a certain teacher in a certain area that's hard to fill, and I thought this person that I knew from previous life was looking for a job and taught in that area. So that person has some leads that may help us out. And one of the things we're up in the air about, I feel fortunate that we have as good a quality of Philippine international teachers as we have. I don't know how we would have kept the voter for the last decade without that. The last 2 years when school started, there were over 2,000 vacancies in the state of Arizona, no teachers. Moving to the course, except last year and this year. Last year, it mitigated the loss of teachers because of COVID. There was a shutdown of the Philippines. They didn't have people around. So people on the J1 visa, instead of stopping for 5 years, after 3 years, they needed a waiver to go to the 4th and 5th year. Well, several people were on their 5th year last year. And so they extended the 6th year. I'm talking to immigration attorney. I said, is there any way they're going to let it happen in the 7th year? And he does not think so. I also talked to another district today about recruiting, and they brought in a teacher just this last month from the Philippines, and they're pretty pleased with the person they had. So we don't know for sure. We're going to act like we're going to be able to, but it's not a guarantee. Without that, we'll get some challenges. I've yet to hire, in my time in office, a teacher from ASU, from ASU or from U of A. I wanted to recruit first. Unfortunately, many students from large universities, unless they've grown up in a small town and grown up here, they want to live in the city. There's opportunities, more chance for graduate work, things like that. So that's why in the past we've gone to Spokane, Washington, California last year. We've done quite a few recruiting trips. Went to the recruiting trip this year. All online.
I was from recruiting in Ohio.
I picked her up at Springfield.
I do appreciate our staff. I do believe we have a really good staff here.
Thank you. I think so too. I'm biased, but I think we have a decent staff. I'd be comfortable having my granddaughter in school.
Oh, my kids will win.
I saw them today. Anyway, so that's, but what we want to do right now, we're revising the teaching contract, making sure it meets all the bells and whistles of the law. And as soon as that gets back, the board votes, we'll be issuing contracts as quick as we can.
Question? So teachers not on this list are not coming back, or some of them might be, we're not sure yet?
The latter.
The latter.
And the next is the business items from the February regular board meeting, which is 8C.
We have other personnel items.
We just lumped those all together. Did you lump
With the
something?
resignations and all of them?
Yeah.
So we just touched base
They,
on
we just
resignations
figured
then?
those were pretty standard. Did you want to discuss those?
No, not necessarily. I don't know if anyone else does. I didn't realize we were looking at the whole thing together.
There is a paraprofessional that we put forth to hire for tomorrow night. And then there's another one that we are doing extended leave of absence.
This paraprofessional graduate law high school has been here for probably a year, doing a decent job because of some personal issues, had to take care of some business for about 2 months. So instead of resignation, we suggested to her that she put in a leave of absence without pay, of course.
And March is coming very soon.
It is.
It's really going to be short.
It is. It is.
All right, we go to the business then. And the first item is the school calendar. And
Mr. President is the expert on this. I mentioned to him one morning, we had our Monday morning meeting and had it that afternoon or the next day. I mean, just looking at it casually, it's extremely close to what we have this year. I hope we'll have kids, more of this calendar we've had this year. You don't want to add anything on?
No, it's basically identical to what the one that's there this year. It's just the dates have changed to match the holiday schedules, and, but everything else everything else matches, and we have the full 180 days on the calendar.
We had a mistake years ago. I took the principal's word for it. It wasn't misread, it was long before, and the principal couldn't count right. And so, we had to change it, we had to add a couple of days of school with the person had, so I verified this as well, and we had the 480 days. And, the state requires, or they say 180 days, or in the statute, the number of hours per age group, and we always beat the hours. Because especially in our K3, we changed that about 10 years ago. We used to dismiss at 2:15. We keep them because of siblings that help them get home safely, bus runs, plus people get tired, but they get used to this teaching around.
Deborah, I have one question. Are the blue squares days that the children do not go to school?
That's a half day.
Those are Wednesday half day, or those are half days.
Those
All
are
right,
one-
half day.
one-
So when
1:15.
it's teachers' conference, then they're only, those 3 days are only their half day.
Correct, because they use afternoons for
Okay.
conference times.
I didn't- Any more questions on the calendar? Then the next is, declaration of sole source provider, and that's for our air, correct?
Yes, All Night Air Conditioning. The firm is Almighty Air Max. The gentleman in town with the license is Terry Henley. We have had refrigeration units, a number of them go out, thank goodness it's still cool weather. One staff member I worry about in an office, because the refrigeration system is also the heating system. And so, we have run the approval through, School Facilities Board, and we talked about attached, you'll see the units. We have one 3.5 ton unit, which is not that expensive, another 3-ton unit, which is not that expensive, but then we have several from the gymnasium. We have 4 or 5 15-ton units, and a 7.5 ton unit. Those are quite expensive. And so we're not to the bid threshold, but definitely it's a written quote threshold for procurement. And so Leanne will be on Zoom tomorrow night if you have any specific questions, but it's difficult to find people when construction is prospering that want to drive to Oslo for refrigeration. We've had one company we dealt with for quite a while, and they were operating here based on a residential license only. They tried to charge us twice for one bill, and I had to deal with the Arizona registrar of contractors. Suddenly they changed their mind and offered to drop that bill. We had another company that was pretty reliable, but we couldn't depend on them being here when we needed. So when the weather gets hot, if we want SFB to pay for our stuff, put in a BRG, Building Mill Grant. And they have a new computerized system that's driving everybody nuts. Angelina has just about mastered it, but what Ms. Burns recommended, we do have a contractor here in town, that go for sole source because of the distance and the readiness of that person to repair or replace. And because students, if it's August or May, the refrigeration system goes out in a classroom. We've handled our COVID problem because the kids aren't going to school, but it's not safe for staff or for students, so we're asking the board to declare sole source. And that's legal for procurement and our auditors.
Right now, we have 2 classrooms in an office that have no working heat or AC.
That's very frustrating.
Yeah.
How long do they think it will take to put that in? I know you told me that they have to get a crane.
Yeah, they're going to get cranes. I I would hope we have this done by spring break, or during spring break, I hope. Please don't let people far. First of all, they gotta get the equipment. And then they have to get, another contractor. And I trust Mr. Henley. He's worked on my own house, to my knowledge, he's honest. And, he thinks he can get it pretty quickly. His son works under his license in the valley, so between the two, they got their equipment, and he can do the work. He works with Jose, he comes in and does some small work on some farm. With Jose, as much time as I do. So that's great. And SFB will not recommend vendors. And, I get frustrated with, I'm not an engineer. And to get a bid, construction people want to have specs. I can tell you what we need, but just because my father was in construction doesn't mean I understand how to spec. And some things I might not have, but I'm going to trust myself to do that all the time. So this was something like that.
Any questions? Then moving along, we'll go to 3 and 4, which is on together, and that is the naming on the boardroom and the office for 2 of our worthy people that were on the board. We like to have the boardroom in room for Lisa and Rossi. Then it's the Angelina's area. I don't see it. District office. Okay. District office will be named for Rose K. Cameron.
These ladies, between the two of them, put at least 40 years, maybe 50 years in this district. And they're both very strong personalities. Over my career knowing them, I appreciate both of them. We didn't always agree. Well, there were some times we didn't agree, but it was always a professional, solution-oriented conversation. And as superintendent, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I said this before, but I'd like to see some more community input on this. I don't think 24 hours on an agenda is enough. It may be that people have other ideas, and I don't see the need to rush it, honestly. In a month, if we put it in the paper, that we're seeking community input on these 2 ideas, we put it in the paper, maybe we get some ideas, some comments, and then we can vote on it next month.
I don't want to be a popularity contest. We talked about this the last board meeting. Policy does not require a committee. I have talked to people in the community about both candidates. We've had 100% support of who I talked to. And I talked to people that saw me change it. I talked to people in the community as well as people in the district. And people have been very affirmative. I didn't ignore that. I just haven't had a committee for things that policy doesn't require. And
I understand that. I don't think there's a lot of risk that it becomes a popularity contest. I don't know, but it seems we don't have to ask our community what they think. But it seems like something that we should do, just as a matter of good faith. Let's say this is your community building. We want to know what you think. It just seems like the right thing to do.
I know last meeting, I expressed the same thing, that wanting to know who's gonna have it. Lay in the paper, in the paper or something, just letting people know, get what you're talking about, everybody nominating their friends for everything's for this, not everything. That I have nothing against you, the buildings after, after, starting on, it's awesome. But don't know why, it was just last month that we changed the rule of 10 years, 2 minutes. I'm not sure that it would be a rush to go on this meeting, if we did decide to have some.
Are either of you opposed to waiting a month for the vote and getting public input? But
I think, I'm never opposed to getting public input on stuff, ever. I think that's important. But Mr. Guthrie stated last month, we're elected by the community, and we represent the community. I'm sure, and I spoke to the same people, because I'm not really knowing the district and the community, and it's overwhelming support. And it's almost, it seemed like a moot point to have to do that if we already have overwhelming support for this. Let's keep the agenda open for March for something else that we could do to put on the agenda instead of doing this after a month of asking questions, doing things like that. Opening up. I understand community involvement is very important, but I think we have overwhelming community support of this regardless. And I'd rather see other issues brought up on the agenda in March than having the same one.
And I agree with that. I've talked to a lot of people and they think it's wonderful. And so I don't think it's a rush, it's just, we've been talking about it. So maybe just.
yeah, I think it's also a nice gesture to just put something simple out. It's like, hey, what do you think doing this?
You'll have a chance to vote on that tomorrow night. I mean, I don't think we can make a decision tonight whether we would name or not, so that tomorrow, if you feel that way, you will know. And then,
Well, I would probably.
if we had a majority, we would carry it over and do what you say. Now that it's on the agenda.
I think I would vote to table it and see if there was any support. It seems like an act of good faith on our part and transparency, and I think we need to do that wherever we can to show the community that we care what they think. And I know you two have talked to people, Dr. Julie has talked to people. I haven't heard from anyone. And maybe we wouldn't, but at least it's demonstrating that we do care what people think.
I think perhaps Eric and I have heard more because we need them well, much more than say you and I. And
I think
when we mention that to them, and then they pass it around, and everyone was very, very.
I think the bigger thing is just demonstrating our effort to hear what the community has to say. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah. Let's do the last one, is the board request to add agenda items to future meetings. This is not going to be a voting item in a regular meeting, but this is just a discussion, and then some recommendation is necessary.
I thought this was what the board was asking for. I think, I think some people, some voters thought that it would be an item to vote yes or no because it was on the agenda tonight. I have never, doesn't mean it's not good. I have not seen them in my career. I've worked with a number of boards here in the valley. But this type of agenda item is not uncommon. We did it very formally here for 18, 19 years. And so that is what this is from. I think this was the gist of the request.
I kind of like the idea of, for, at the end of the agenda, if any of the board members may have something like to see, then they can bring it up, and that way we have a public record of it. And then it can be looked at and say, okay, let's triage what we need to put on this next month's agenda. Which of these, and then we kind of all stay on the same page. It's not like a surprise for some of us, you know. I'm okay with that. I mean, we're all here to make discussions and discuss things and solve problems before they even happen. I'm all for mitigating the emergency before it happens. So, the other thing I was thinking about was, you know, we do this, I almost feel like as clerk of the board, it's my responsibility to compile these things and then get with the president and the superintendent and say, hey, these are what we have. Let me know what we're gonna do so I can get back to those individuals personally. That way it takes a little less work off of Marcia, off of Dr. Dooley. You know, I'm a clerk of the board. I need to assume some more responsibilities here. I guess I feel compelled to. And I don't know how the rest of you board members feel about that.
We can brag.
You know, I'm just trying to keep the communication open between all of us. And so everything flows smoothly. And I'm fine with that.
It's a good idea.
I'm the secretary of the board, I totally agree.
Sounds like a great idea.
So it already is in our policy, the call for future request for future agenda items already is in our policy, like I said before. I don't think we have to vote on it, so there's no, we have to.
I think we just add it to the agenda.
Right, it has to be added.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
Anything else about a miss they want to comment on?
And then I recommend that we adjourn and it says 7:50, 7:05.
You said 7:50.
Well, I'm looking at the,
I'm not up for 7:50. Thanks, though.
And then we take our stuff.
no, I was
Yeah,
looking
we
at
have
my
to make our
minute.
because there'll be copies in here tomorrow. We can put it in the boardroom.
I'll just throw mine in the board because we're gonna, they're an issue, right?
Right, yeah, we can throw them in the boardroom right now.
Yeah.
Really?
Isn't it crazy?
No,
it is like.
What's that?
Good night.
My second.
Run, Angelina, run.
I've read that.
Yeah.